Paul, maybe just talk a little bit about the decision to go with Logan, I presume over Sami for the game tonight to replace Nathan Beaulieu. What kind of tipped the scales in his favor?
Well, we like the games that he played for us, and we think that size and that range that he has can be pretty darn effective, especially against the groups that he'll go out against. What's unusual about Logan is that a man at that size, he's got really good hands for inside plays, right? The small, short area things that almost take more skill than the longer bombs that you send up the ice or having a big shot. He can make a lot of good little things happen in that 5-10 foot circle. And that's kind of based on the way they forecheck, it's really, really important. So we liked it. We liked his game when he came out. There wasn't a reason for it. There wasn't a hole in his game. And going in tonight, I have him ahead of Sami.
The next to Paul Stravevsky from NHL.com. Go ahead, Paul.
Good morning, Paul. I'd like to ask your take on scoring by defensemen, because it looks like teams that are doing well in the standings are mostly those that get a lot of points from their D. And the Jets are sort of the exception to the rule here. You're doing really well despite getting just 18% of your overall points by defensemen, which is the lowest in the league. So that's why I want to sort of ask you to describe your philosophy on defensemen being involved on offense.
Well, we would love them to score. We're probably a little less aggressive in terms of pinching at the offensive line, and not so much, maybe jumping into the offensive holes. We like our D to support the rush and join the rush. But when you look at our team, we feel that we're going to score goals. And we feel that for us to win, though, we have to defend. And so maybe we've pulled our D back a little bit. It's not so much that we don't want them up on the ice or we don't want them involved. We're a little bit more careful when we ask them to get down the wall, how long we let them stay in the offensive zone, some things like that. So there's some very dynamic teams that it's 5 men and they're all over the ice in the offensive zone, and that's great. But for our group, we feel we'll generate offense. We've got a really high scoring forward group, and we need a little bit more certainty support for our blue line. So that may have something to do with it. We've got a couple of guys that have put up offensive numbers, but we also have defensemen in our lineup that over the course of their career, we're just not built like that, I guess is the way I'm saying. We don't have 4 highly offensive defensemen in our lineup.
We'll go next to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Thanks, Gregor. Hey, Paul. One thing your team I find does really well is that they always seem to be on the same theme, on the same point, which I'm assuming comes from coaches. And talking yesterday, a lot of the players had said, they're happy with that game and that win, but they want to be better defensively and expect to be better defensively. What have you done with the team over the last couple of days that makes you feel that's going to be the case tonight?
Well, they're all students of it. They'll all, this team's a little bit unusual that you'll show a video meeting and then you'll have a lot of conversations after where the players will ask questions about it. They're really in tune to our game and what we're trying to do. We try to, with the exception of the Montreal game, we kind of try to tell the story of the game the next day and how that fits into what we're doing. We don't do the whole game. We work in themes. So our theme for the Toronto game is we think we can control parts of our end of the ice a little better than we did in the past. And it would also then, it's not the first time they've seen that, right? From training camp on, this is a piece of our game and that we need to improve at. We're also going to play 3 games against, one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the NHL at exploiting those areas, getting the pucks to the net, getting the puck to the slots. This is a huge challenge for us. So those guys are in tune. They understand what we're trying to get done, and they're really willing to work at it.
We'll go next to Ken Weaver from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Weaver.
Afternoon, Paul. You've seen various levels of desperation from seemingly every team in this division so far. What is a 3-game losing streak for a team that you're chasing? What do you anticipate that looks like in terms of what you'll be facing tonight?
Yeah, I think, Ken, I would agree with what you say, but I almost find it more in games. So because of this kind of 4-point, every game feels like a playoff game. When the other team gets down a goal, they push hard. And Toronto did in that game. They got into that second half of the third period, man. They were 4 up the ice and they were heavy on the forecheck and they were really, really dynamic in the game. I mean, I assessed their game like ours. I mean, they played pretty darn well. I don't think there's any panic in their room, nor should there be. Yeah, there'll be hyper aggressive and they're going to want to play their best. But I don't believe Toronto will cross the line into a desperation that makes them weaker, where their risk profile changed to the point where you're going to be able to take advantage of it. They'll come out hard. We know we got to get better. This is kind of that playoff series where you won the first game, you know, the team's coming back fully focused. And what's true around the league is it's very difficult to win 2 in a row against any team.
We'll go next to Scott Billick from the Winnipeg Sun. Go ahead, Scott.
Hey, Paul. What do you like about Logan's game in terms of the shots he generates?
Yeah,
He's a guy who seems to gain the blue line, and then he takes the shot whenever he gets it, it seems. What do you like about that in his game?
the frequency that he gets it to the net, and he has such a big range on him. He can shoot it from fairly close in, but he can stretch that stick right across his body, and he knows how to do that. So those are the kind of the unique things of Logan Stanley, and you're right on that would be up near the top. I mean, you've seen a lot of shot blocking in this league. It's hard to get a puck to the net from the point, but he seems to be able to do it. And I think at times, Scott, that's a talent, right? It's a skill that some guys have it, some guys don't. He does. I think that skill also, he'll make some pretty nifty plays that maybe don't get noticed, but in traffic, through a guy, under a stick, over a stick. I think that talent you see at both ends of the ice.
We'll go next to Murat Atesh from The Athletic. Go ahead, Murat.
Thanks, Gregor. Hi, Paul. I just wanted to follow up on the concept of offense from the blue line. I mean, sometimes it's point totals, but I know there are certain seams that your defense look for. There's certain shots from the point that you're looking for something in front as well. So, I mean, even if it's not going to necessarily be about a goal or an assist at the end of the day, what is it that they can do that can kind of help in that way?
Well, it is keeping the puck alive. So, as I had said earlier, we're a little bit careful with our pinches. But what they can do is when you've got a forward unit that's been rolling around in a group, eventually the puck will change sides. You got to make a decision where you're going to let that weak side pinch on that puck or not. That would be the place. So, and that would be the difference in how we look, over maybe 2-3 years ago, right? So we would have, and I'll just use Dustin Byfuglien because he's out of the game. I mean, he's going down that wall every time, whether the coach tell him or not. And I wouldn't not tell him, because 95% of the time he'd come up with that puck, right? And that would make, and yes, he would generate points from the top, so he'd get big numbers. But that's a big part of your offensive game, how aggressive that defense can be at the blue line. We've done a good job of, when our D is aggressive at the line and down the wall, our forwards fill for it. So we're not giving up odd man breaks because of it. So we've been able to maintain a certain defensive structure, even with an aggressive D. I would just admit that we aren't quite as aggressive as with the D down the wall as you see other teams. Like I said, we feel there's enough offense there that we don't have to raise that risk. We also feel with our blue line, we're structured not to, right? With the kind of personnel they have, certainly we want Neil going down, and Josh will get down the wall, and Tucker will for sure too. But we also have defensemen there that didn't come into the NHL as that kind of offensive player. So our numbers are just going to be down a little bit in the offensive zone.
We'll go next to Mark Masters from TSN. Go ahead, Mark.
Paul, I know he's on the other side, but I'm wondering what goes through your head when you see Joe Thornton at age 41 out there still grinding away and playing on a top line with the Leafs.
Yeah, I think we might have come into the league just about the same time. So I remember him being in Sault Ste. Marie way back when, and then to Boston as a young man. I don't know him at all, other than, Pete DeBoer just raved about his personality and all the things that he would bring to a room. At the end, I think what you see is a joy and a love of the game, because you cannot go through what these guys put their bodies through unless going to the rink is just something that you're very, very passionate about. I would, he's such an effective player, still so smart, has had an impact on all the teams in the styles of play. Like you see Toronto change sides quite a bit more than maybe in the past. That's a San Jose, that's a Joe Thornton thing, right? Those guys in San Jose would rip it from one corner out to the weak side point all the time. When we played Team Canada at the World Cup against us, the one game they changed times 16 times. And I think that's him. I think that's the impact that he has on the game. So he's made a huge impact, and good for him that he still has the passion for the game, that he still wants to come to the rink. And I think it's been great for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
And final question to Scott Billick from the Sun. Go ahead, Scott.
Hey, Paul, just going back to Logan again, what do you use as a reference point for him? There's not a lot of, 6'7" defensemen in the NHL, and the ones that are, I mean, Zdeno Chara, obviously a Hall of Famer. Like, what do you use to
So
kind of
That's a
assess
really
his
good,
play?
yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. So you're not necessarily trying to find a single player out there because he is unique. But you use the Chara reach and some of those longer guys. I mean, even Tyler Myers had some things about him, how he would use his stick, especially to steer somebody early to get him to the part of the ice that you want. But then, he's a bit unique in that too. So we think there's other pieces that, as he gets more comfortable with his reads, he'll close the gap faster. I don't think Logan's going to run people through the boards. He's going to finish his checks. He's going to be a physical guy. But I think what he's going to end up become is a really, really durable guy that's going to get his reads right, that you will actually be able to play against the other team's best because he can move the puck. Like if you're going to play against the number one line at some point, you have to be able to move the puck a little bit or you won't get it out of your end. It doesn't matter. Your reads can be great and you can be physical, but you got to be able to move the puck at some point because those guys feast on counters and turnovers, right? So that's where I think this guy, he's going to be able to use the range. He skates well. As his reads get better, he will slowly kind of move up that timeline and his opponent level till he one day plays against the other team's best.